Now, who doesn't remember a magical story told to them by a parent, a colleague, or an influential person in your life? Now, ask yourself, when was the last time you asked a colleague what they got up to at the weekend? I bet that if you were asked to recall what your colleague told you, they would be able to. Storytelling is one of the most basic, yet effective forms of communication. And the reason that you can probably recall your colleague's rendition of their weekend adventures is because their story captivated you. Now, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, The Art and Science of Data Storytelling. My name is Oliver Bowie and I form part of the customer success team here at Triangle Information Management. And for today's webinar, I'm joined by Naveen Shivayogi, a senior business intelligence consultant here at Triangle Information Management. A little about Triangle just before we get started. Now, Triangle are on a mission to help businesses uncover hidden value from their data. We recognise that businesses all over the UK and indeed worldwide are collating huge amounts of data on a daily basis. But when it comes to separating out useful data from the useless data, well, this is where a lot of businesses often come unstuck. And furthermore, even when businesses do uncover hidden insights from their data and valuable information, there's still the need to communicate it to the wider business. And this too is a problem area for businesses today. And so at the end of today's webinar, we want you to leave with a thorough understanding of how you can leverage the power of storytelling to bring a whole new meaning to the way you communicate data insights to the rest of your business, so that the data insights you do uncover can be used to drive real positive business change. Now, to kick off today's webinar, we're going to be taking a whistle-stop tour around the history of storytelling before guiding you through the steps needed to create your narrative. And to conclude the webinar, now we'll be overviewing what makes a successful visualization that can later be combined with your narrative and data to craft a compelling data story. Now, a little housekeeping just before we get started. Today's webinar will last for about 30 minutes. We've got a live poll that we would encourage you to participate in and tell us what you think is the biggest benefit that data storytelling can bring to your business today. Now, this can be accessed by clicking on the polls button below the main webinar screen. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to send all attendees a replay of today's session for viewing at a later date. And all being well, this should arrive with you within 2 hours of us finishing the webinar. And furthermore, if you do have any questions, please type them into the questions panel below your main webinar screen. And providing we've got enough time at the end of the webinar, we'll aim to answer these at the end for you. We'd also like to draw your attention towards an exciting new masterclass from Triangle Information Management. Now, our data storytelling masterclass promises to equip you with the skills and knowledge required to create compelling and engaging data stories that inspire, educate, and prompt action. In the masterclass, you will learn how to leverage the power of data storytelling to bring a whole new meaning to the way you present data insights. You'll learn how to craft your story from start to finish using our simple, proven technique. You'll discover ways to design engaging visualizations that guarantee maximum audience impact. And finally, you'll learn the art of data storytelling and why it's crucial in today's world. And for further information on our data storytelling masterclass and to register your interest, please click the link in your Offers tab below the main webinar screen. So without further ado, let's get started with today's webinar. Now, stories and storytelling has existed long before recorded history. And over the many years, the way that stories are told has changed dramatically. From cave paintings to novels, then to movies. Storytelling has been around for years. The earliest form of storytelling was discovered in the Pyrenees Mountains in southern France, inside the Les Cook's caves. And fast forward to today's date, and Steve Jobs is using this age-old tradition to launch some of those innovative products into the market. Now, Jobs didn't use special effects or props to deliver his message. He simply used the power of storytelling to craft a narrative and engage his audience throughout his renowned keynotes. And as human beings, we like stories. We're taught to understand stories from a very early age. And when we hear a great story, we become engaged. And importantly, we want to stick around and wait to see what happens at the end. Now, storytelling is not new by any means. It has simply evolved with technology over time. And it's our job to ensure that the stories we create resonate both intellectually and emotionally. So why should we be combining storytelling with data? Well, firstly, our brains aren't wired to understand hugely complex graphs, tables, and data sets. Now, as humans, our brains are wired to search for and to uncover the simplest answer to a question or problem. We don't like complexity. In addition to this, stories can be used to educate and to inspire, and often they're also used to entertain. Stories connect with our emotions, and when communicating with data, this is important. Philosopher Tom Asaka once said, "Facts don't persuade, feelings do." And stories are the best way to get at those feelings. By combining data with a story, we can bridge the gap between data and those who need to learn something from it. And finally, why wouldn't we combine data with storytelling? Anyone can tell stories with data, and the benefits of data storytelling are almost endless. A TED talk delivered by Ben Wellington back in 2015 highlighted this fact. Ben Wellington back in 2015 was a computer scientist and data analyst who created a blog called iQuantNY. His blog used open data from New York City to tell stories about everything from parking ticket geography to finding the sweet spot in MetroCard pricing. In the space of a year, he went from not knowing what a data storyteller was to creating stories that subsequently led to policy changes at government level. So, how do we combine storytelling with data? And importantly, where do we start? Well, firstly, we need to start by clarifying a few misconceptions. Now, too often, the term data storytelling is either misinterpreted or it gets associated with other things that are most certainly not data storytelling. Data visualizations, infographics, dashboards, data presentations. In summary, these terms have completely different definitions, and most importantly, they shouldn't be used to describe data storytelling. And secondly, data storytelling is not a waste of time. And some businesses, unfortunately, believe that crafting a story around data is unnecessary and time consuming, and therefore think that as long as the data is presented in a clear way, e.g., in a static graph or table, their audience will have enough to be able to act. In reality, this point of view is flawed, as business decisions are rarely based solely on logic and reason. So, with the misconceptions out of the way, we're going to take you through a step-by-step process to crafting the best data story possible. Now, in summary, there are 3 key ingredients required for an engaging data story. Firstly, you need a narrative. The narrative of your story will help to glue everything together and will help to explain what is happening throughout your presentation. And secondly, you need some visuals. A narrative on its own will just explain, but when combined with visuals, your story will engage. And lastly, you need data. When all these 3 key ingredients are combined, your data story has the ability to inspire, educate, and drive change within your organization. In order to craft a compelling narrative, you need to be concise but comprehensive at the same time. At the very beginning, start by establishing a purpose. Think about, what do I really want to accomplish by building and delivering a data story? And furthermore, give plenty of consideration to the overall message, the theme, and also the feeling that you want to express. For example, do you want your audience to laugh, cry, or tremble? By first deciding on a purpose, everything you choose to include in your story will be guided and will have a structure to work around. In addition to this, make sure the narrative has a hook or something that is going to immediately involve your audience and capture their attention. Now, in effect, you will be competing for your audience's attention. They will have plenty of things to be thinking about during a presentation. Maybe they have an upcoming meeting on their mind or a project. If your narrative is compelling enough, though, it will capture your audience's attention and their devotion will be solely on you and your presentation. Another very important consideration when crafting a narrative for your story is whether or not you will include characters. And our recommendation would be, yes, do include characters. Now, even if you are presenting to the CEO of your organization, don't be afraid to include a character in your story. And remember that the main purpose of data storytelling is to enhance the way we communicate data insights. And we want to do everything we can to ensure that our presentation and its contents are memorable, especially if we want people in the business to take action. Now, if you ask someone in the office what their favorite film is, the likelihood is you will have a response in seconds. And the reason why people remember these stories is simple. It's because they all contain great characters. And as human beings, we naturally become involved with a character in a story. And commonly, the character in a story is faced with a challenge that they need to overcome. Often, the challenge appears difficult to overcome, but importantly, it must be believable. The character will have hurdles to overcome, but at the end of the story, the outcome they have reached should be clear. And when considering a character for your story, give plenty of consideration to who is most suitable to play the part. Maybe you create a character with a particular job function, or it might be a particular type of consumer, e.g. a parent of a young child looking to buy a new bicycle. Alternatively, the character in your story might not be made up at all. As long as the story is relevant to you, then you might become the main character in your story. After deciding whether or not your story should have a character, we need to consider who it is that you are going to be telling your data story to. Now, a good amount of thought needs to go into identifying who your audience is and what level you need to communicate with them at. One of the most important uses of data storytelling is to make the data as understandable as possible. However, this can't be achieved without an understanding of your audience. Knowing your audience is key. Bern Hobart once said, "Too often the data will make sense to those who put reports together, but not to those who might actually read them." A good rule is to have someone outside the organization read it and explain what it means. If they interpret it correctly, you're on a good path. A nice tip there. And finally, once you have given consideration to the purpose, the hook, the characters, and your audience, you can begin to map out your narrative. Building your narrative is very similar to planning a journey or an expedition. In the very first instance, we need to think about where do we want to end up? Where is our finish point or destination? What do we want to achieve as a result of telling this story with our data? And once we have the answer to these questions, we should be in a good position to fill out the conclusion in our narrative template. By acknowledging the conclusion to our story first, we know where we are heading. We know what we want to achieve. Now, depending on which approach you find the easiest and most straightforward, we can either work backwards from your conclusion, e.g. planning the end of the story, then the middle, then the start, or we can start at the beginning of the story and plan out the route to our end destination. Personally, I prefer to identify what I want my conclusion to be and then start at the beginning of the story, planning out what route I want to take and thinking about what I need to be telling my audience at the beginning, the middle, and the end of my story. Now, there are other templates that you could use, however, the majority of them overcomplicate things slightly. And we recommend starting with this template as a simple, straightforward approach to mapping out your story. Before we go any further with today's webinar, let's recap on the steps we've taken so far to create our story and our narrative. Number one, let's clarify what the purpose of your story is and think about what you want to accomplish. Ensure you give plenty of consideration to your overall message, the theme of the story, and also the feeling that you want to influence your audience with. And secondly, make sure you include a hook in your story, or something that is going to immediately grab your audience's attention. Next, decide whether or not you include a character in your story. Remember, the character can be made up, or that character can be you. Just make sure that the character is relevant to your story. And finally, consider who it is that you will be telling your story to. Is it the management team, colleagues, or a new customer? Always give consideration to your audience. Great. So now we've followed a process in order to create our narrative. Next, we're going to be taking a look at how to create a winning visualization to complement your narrative. But before we do, I've got a quick tip that I wanted to share with you. Now, today, many organizations have recruited data scientists already to craft stories with data. I was reading an article recently that suggested a very good idea. And Martin Brown, General Manager of digital marketing, consulting, and software development firm FM Outsource, mentioned that he often has data scientists, business analysts, and marketeers working together to create a data story. Often by combining different skill sets when creating a different story, a data story, different perspectives emerge, and commonly the data story can be communicated in a more compelling way. For the next part of today's webinar, I'm going to hand over to Nav, who's going to be walking you through how to create an engaging visualization to complement your narrative.
Thank you, Ollie. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Naveen, and I'm one of the consultants working here at Triangle. I'll be spending a bit of time discussing why visualizations are beneficial to use in dashboards or reports, a few best practice top tips when using visuals, and an example of using visuals in a story. Now, the purpose of using visuals is to allow us to make sense of data, to give us a clear understanding and communicate findings. You may also find patterns, trends, and correlations of data which you may have missed if you were instead looking at it in a text format. Some typical visuals used in analytics are charts such as bar, line, pie, and radar. Other commonly used visuals include bubble charts, tree maps, heat maps, world clouds, or mapping of geospatial data. Of course, there are many options to visualize your data. You need to ensure you choose the right one for the right purpose. Some visuals may look impressive, but if they do not meet their objective of explaining the data, then there is little point in using them. Let's take, for example, a pie chart. Pie charts are typically used to show proportional data, but are they really that effective? Here you can see sales by product, but can you really tell how well each product types are doing? Which is doing better, camping equipment in the light blue or outdoor protection in the yellow? Unless we start cluttering the visual with labels and values, it is difficult to tell. However, if we display the same data in a bar chart, we can now start to compare product types alongside each other and get a better view of which ones are performing stronger. It's a simple change, but it is effective and intuitive. Again, let's compare two other visuals of the same data. On the left, we have a table of sales by month and product line. There is a lot of information here, but where are the strong sales? Where are the low sales? Where should we be focusing? Using this table, you would have to delve in and analyze it line by line to answer these questions. With a simple visual, we can immediately see a cleaner look at the data, and areas of strengths and weaknesses can be seen to allow for further analysis and business decisions to be made. When using visuals, we feel there are a few best practices that should be followed to get full value when presenting data. Number one, less is more. What I mean here is not to over elaborate with visuals. They should be clean, concise, and to the point. So, for example, remove any unnecessary clutter, such as labels, legends, titles, grid lines, and data markers. If you see a visual which is overly then it immediately puts off your audience. Let's take a look at an example. Here you can see a bar chart which is cluttered with labels, titles, grid lines, bright colors which are not necessary. With a few changes, you can clean this chart up so the audience can see a more concise, elegant chart, which is a lot easier on the eye and does not lose its objective of showing sales for each product type. Number two, use effective visuals. There are many different types of visual options to use in the various tools available. However, it is vital that you select the correct visual to convey your message. You may find that you only use the same handful of visuals, but these will probably meet your needs. These might be tables, bar charts, line charts, heat maps, slope graphs, or just text. There may be times where different types of visuals can be used for the same purpose, but what is important is that the visual articulates the message and is clear and easy to your audience to understand. Number three, colors. Using colors in your visuals can be a very effective way of drawing the audience's attention to a specific area on your report. However, at the same time, using colors can be detrimental in getting your message across. Are you using too many colors? Are they too bright? Are you using colors for the sake of it? When it comes to colors, use them sparingly, consistently, and avoid confusion. Maybe you have brand colors that will incorporate well into your visuals, and maybe avoid the colors of your competitors. Let's look at an example of the same chart. The one on the left here includes colors on each bar, but it can distract you from the message it is conveying. The one on the right has colors with a gradient to make it easier on the eye. So now I'd like to take you into a demo of an example story we have created. For this, we have used the IBM Business Analytics tool, Cognos Analytics. The scenario for this story is that we are presenting the 2017 annual sales back to our board and analysing the impact on sales following a product recall. My audience will be made up of members of the board who are obviously very senior people. They will not want to see details, and the visuals should get the message across quickly and clearly. Let's first look at our sales by each of our product lines year on year. As we can see, nearly all of our product lines we have had a good steady increase in sales. However, looking at outdoor protection, there has been a decrease in sales against last year. Let's break down outdoor protection to analyse the impact of this loss. First of all, we compare year-on-year sales for each quarter, and we see that sales are down consistently over the whole year. Let's split the sales by European country to see if one country maybe took a hit on sales. Using this tree map, we can see that there has been a change in our top 3 countries in 2017. United Kingdom has significantly dropped. Here we have a breakdown of our outdoor protection product line for 2016 and 2017. We can see that all 3 product types were impacted with major losses across all products. So to recap, we have seen increased sales in all of our product lines apart from outdoor protection. In particular, first aid suffered heavily due to stock issues and recalls. However, now that these issues have been resolved, we expect sales in this area to recover in 2018 with the help of a number of promotions planned. As I mentioned earlier, I have used the IBM tool Cognos Analytics to put this story together. Using Cognos Analytics, you are able to reuse analysis, insights, and visualizations from existing dashboards. You are also able to include new visuals, media, web pages, images, shapes, and text to your story. When creating scenes, you can add effects to how visuals and objects enter and exit in your story, and also highlight specific data. That concludes my part of this webinar. I thank you for your time, and I'll pass back to Ollie.
Thank you, Nev. Now, that leads me to say thank you very much for attending our webinar today. As a reminder, a link to the Data Storytelling Masterclass can be found in your Offers tab below the main webinar screen. And should you have any questions after today's webinar, please do reach out to our customer success team by emailing insights@triangle-bpm.com. That's insights@triangle-bpm.com. Thank you very much once again, and we look forward to seeing you on a webinar again soon.